Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about how to sleep better in midlife. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle with over 1 million downloads and counting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife clarity queen, and I am so glad to be here with you again. Now, I have a feeling the vast majority of listeners to this podcast will relate to my guest today. We are talking about sleep, and in midlife, it can be gruesome. I think you know what I mean. So we're going in, and it's going to be interesting. You will raise your awareness and get some questions that you've been thinking about for a while answered too. I would bet on it. But just quick, I want to share something exciting and new with you. I know that in midlife, it's easy to get stuck and confused about your priorities and what the heck you really want to do with your valuable time on this planet. No small thing. You are really not alone when it comes to getting clear about what you want, what your passion is, what you want to make sure you don't have regrets about. So I came up with something new. Well, my thinking about this problem actually started out years ago in my first mastermind called 50 Unplugged, and also as part of the Women in the Middle Academy. I kept working on teaching the concepts and learning more and more about what would really help you. Then I packaged my insights into the Happiness and Success workshop, which you may have taken, and it was a live workshop that I had been teaching for over a year. And now there's been one more transformation that you're going to be excited about. I've morphed it into something that gives you results fast and easy. It's called the Get Unstuck Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy Masterclass. Here's the scoop. Life is too short to waste time feeling stuck in midlife. If you don't do something about your stuck state of affairs, nobody will. Now you can do this. Take this fun online midlife masterclass and get clear about your next chapter priorities without spin, confusion, and overwhelm in less than an hour. My amazing woman in the middle, picture this. You snap your fingers. You're crystal clear about what your priorities are so that you can take the next steps. You finally feel free because you know how to move forward. You see that you have plenty of time to have more fun and meaning in your life. Boom. That's what I'm talking about. You can grab this masterclass and get unstuck about your priorities fast and easy on your own time in the comfort of your own home and without being live on screen. Like I said, it's fast and easy, way easier than you think. You can get clear about your next chapter priorities in less than an hour and celebrate the most clarity you've had about what you really want in life in decades. If you're listening in real time, the unbelievably affordable introductory pricing is on now. If you're tired of feeling stuck and bored with craving more happiness and excitement in your life because you don't know what you want, run, don't walk. You've got nothing to lose and clarity to gain, my friend. Head over to www.midliferoadmap.com and download Get Unstuck Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy and get started. And you may have noticed that, you know what? I am a little excited about my new virtual masterclass, and you will be too. This masterclass is that good and that affordable. You are gonna flip. Okay. Now, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, sleep. You know, catch some Z's, get some shut-eyes, sleep like a log, snooze, catch 40 winks, all those things. Specifically, this week's episode is about how to sleep better in midlife with special guest Morgan Adams. Morgan is a holistic sleep coach for women who struggle with getting a good night's sleep consistently. Her goal is to help women feel better and live better, and the key to both begins with a good night's sleep. Sleep is a huge problem for midlife women and can have surprising negative health effects. Morgan is also a former insomniac who went almost a decade using prescription sleeping pills despite knowing that her overall sleep quality suffered. She's also a 2-time breast cancer survivor who advocates for a lifestyle of disease prevention and integrating holistic strategies for cancer treatment. If you're like so many midlife women struggling with your sleep, I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of this episode. And also, please note, the information shared in this podcast is intended for your convenience, entertainment, and education, and isn't geared to your personal situation. It's not a replacement for care or advice from your own medical professional. So as always, you may have some things you want to follow up on. So please seek a suitable professional to advise you on your personal situation. I don't think you'll be nodding off during this interview. It is way too good. So please enjoy. Hi, Morgan. Thanks so much for joining me today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thank you, Susie. I'm really excited to be here chatting with you.
Me too. Like, first of all, you're in Virginia. You're an East Coast girl, which I love because I'm originally from Philadelphia. But the main reason you're here is your story's interesting and you're talking about, for many of us, sleep is the final frontier. So that's how it was with me, where you tick off all the other boxes and work on your health. And so many of us forget that sleep is a critical part of our health. So I can't wait to really go into that with you because I was very surprised by the whole thing. Yes. So let's get started with you talking a little bit about what was going on in your 40s. I love women's stories about how they end up doing what they're doing. So please take it away.
Sure. Well, in my 40s, I was mainly working in the healthcare field, not as a direct provider, but in more of the communications and marketing of healthcare systems and public health. And when I was 48, I lived a pretty healthy lifestyle, I thought, on the surface. But as I delved deeper, I learned I wasn't really doing a lot of things the right way. But when I was 48, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it did come as quite a shock because, like I'd said, I thought I was living in a very healthy way. But as I began to go through my recovery process, I drastically changed my life as far as my health habits and cleaned up my life, essentially. And things were pretty good. And I would say probably, I had some struggles with insomnia in my earlier 40s, I would say. And I'd struggled with it for about 8 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a while. I took Ambien as a way to relieve the insomnia per my family doctor's recommendation. And eventually I did come to a point where I decided that I wanted to stop. And that was actually kind of a really enlightening moment. I met my now husband back then. He was my new boyfriend. And he said something to me that just really shook me. He said, when you take those pills at night, you kind of turn into a zombie, and it freaks me out. So I thought, okay, he's right. These pills are not serving me well. I had a lot of residual side effects the next day. I mean, it did get me to sleep faster, but those side effects were really impairing my life, impairing my work.
Can you give an example of a side effect?
Yeah, for sure. So I had a lot of just real brain fog and grogginess, usually up until about lunchtime. And when I started doing more research, recently and several years ago about sleeping pills, what I came to learn is about 80% of people do have residual side effects similar to what I had. And in fact, in 2013, right as I was beginning to, stop the sleeping pills, the FDA issued a rule that the Ambien dose for women had to be cut in half because essentially women were getting overdosed on Ambien, hence those really severe grogginess side effects the next morning.
Wow, this is interesting to me. So you'd already been on the path to clean up your health. And I was wondering, though, what was one of the surprises that was for you when you were thinking about getting healthier versus already living a so-called healthy life? What came up for you as you took a good look at that?
Yeah, I would say, probably the most impactful thing was my alcohol use. I was, probably, now that I think about it, I've had to really, delve into those habits that I think set the stage for breast cancer. I don't want to say alcohol was the one thing. I think that breast cancer is such a multifactorial type of disease. Many things can impact its emergence. But I think that alcohol was, a significant player. And what we know about alcohol is it does raise your estrogen levels. And I had estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. So there is that theme there. I think I was probably drinking 12 glasses of wine a week. And I didn't really think a lot of that I thought, okay, I was drinking, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, a few drinks each time. I wasn't going out and partying. It was mostly at home with my husband or a friend or whatever. But as I began to really kind of unpeel the alcohol, I started to understand that was in fact heavy drinking for a woman. I think it's over 7 drinks for a woman is considered heavy drinking. And that really shocked me. So I scaled way back on my drinking for one.
Wow. It's so interesting because just this year or last year, the low risk drinking guidelines came out, and I think everybody was shocked by what low risk really means according to newer research. So wow, very insightful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other things I did were I cleaned up all of my skincare, makeup, personal care, cleaning products because there were lots and lots of hormone disrupting chemicals in those. I cleaned up my diet, took a lot of the additives and the seed oils and processed foods out of my diet and went to a more whole foods diet. So, I mean, I made very, very large changes.
Yeah.
That, it's interesting because even though I did have breast cancer, I felt during that process of getting better, I felt more healthy than I did before breast cancer.
Wow.
I ended up not actually getting conventional breast cancer treatments. So when I got diagnosed, I decided to go the more holistic route. I went to a clinic in Cancun, Mexico for 3 weeks for treatments that are not really offered in North America, in the States. So I didn't do the chemo or the radiation. Instead, I did treatments that were more like vitamin C drips, hyperbaric oxygen chamber, sauna. So I did a lot of really enriching types of practices that did not make me feel badly during my healing process. So I had an interesting experience during that cancer journey because I did not look sick. I actually looked more vibrant and alive and glowing than I did before I technically was sick. Really interesting. So.
Wow. Okay. So then that's going on. And then it's funny that when you were looking into all that, you didn't think of the medication in the same way as cleaning up your health until somebody that really cared about you pointed something out.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of felt like a medication was like not the same thing, really.
Right.
But it was really more of the medication side effects that really kind of made me pause and stop. I did end up just tapering off the medication, and I really don't like, now that I know about sleep and sleep meds and I'm a sleep specialist, I understand that you really need somebody to help you through the process. The first step is really to go to your healthcare provider who prescribed the medications and ask them to provide you with some kind of taper schedule, because abruptly discontinuing them can be really uncomfortable. It can lead to rebound insomnia. And I think it also helps to have someone like a sleep coach alongside with you to give you the support. The sleep coach isn't the one deciding on the medication taper, but they're there helping you and helping you gain more confidence in your sleep so that you feel more comfortable going off the pills. But I didn't know all this back then. So right. I was kind of winging it. And fortunately it worked out. Fortunately, it worked out for me that I was able to get better sleep, and I slept very well, until the pandemic started. And, in that first 2 months of the pandemic, that March, April time period, my sleep really started to decline. And I got very, nervous about going back into full blown insomnia. So I started to research sleep. I got an Oura ring to start tracking my sleep, and I was able to get it back and get better sleep again. And as
what was it about the Oura ring? Because I just got one actually.
Oh, I noticed that on your hand. Yes.
So tell me what about it with you helped you?
Yeah. So I think that, when you have an Oura ring, you can look at the things that you do. For example, I'll use alcohol for an example. If you are drinking too much, too close to bedtime, what you will probably notice in your Oura ring scores the next morning are lowered readiness and sleep scores. And so, and also eating late at night or eating sugary foods, heavier foods at night will lower your sleep scores. So when you are able to notice and make that connection between what you consumed and your sleep score, most people are more apt to make a behavioral change. So I think they're really great tools for a lot of people in making those tweaks to their behaviors. So when I started learning more about sleep, I just organically started to share it on Facebook. And I found out that a lot of my friends during that early stage of the pandemic were struggling with their sleep as well. And I just became enraptured with the whole topic of sleep. That was 2020. So I had this revelation, I think it was summer of 2020, because of that breast cancer experience. I really did feel like my calling was to help women with their health, but I really just wasn't sure how that would play out, in what realm I would help them. And all of a sudden it was like sleep. I'm going to become a sleep coach for women, because I really truly understood at that point that sleep was the foundation upon which the other pillars of health are built. And so that was, 2020. I did all of my studying, all of my courses and certifications, and started coaching people in 2021, and then got a second breast cancer diagnosis right as I was beginning my business. And, it was a very stressful time because I had made all these health changes, right? I was like convinced that I was never going to have a recurrence, and it just came back, and that it was devastating to me. But I'm the kind of person that I just felt like I can't stop the train now. I'm starting to coach. I'm starting to help these women with their sleep. I can't just stop what I'm doing. It helped me actually get through the second breast cancer experience. Just building my business and building my clientele was really helpful in helping me get through that second breast cancer.
What was the main reason that it was helpful?
I just felt like I had a mission and a purpose rather than just stopping the business and just doing nothing. I felt like the doing nothing helped. It served nobody. It didn't serve me. It didn't serve other people. So I didn't stress myself out in terms of like taking on like too many clients. Like I took on the number of clients I felt that I could manage, because there were disruptions with like a surgery and, just various doctors calling back and forth. I decided to still see clients, but just not like have like a full book of clients. So, that kept me going. It gave me just this sense of like, you're doing something to help other people instead of wallowing in, poor me, look at this second diagnosis,
Well, except there was a lot going on. I mean, you had to manage your own anxiety and exhaustion from dealing with all this new stuff, I would imagine, and surgery. Like that's a lot to manage.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, so my mastectomy was in November of 21, and I bounced back from that really quickly. So it was, and I didn't have any of the chemo or the radiation. So it was just, because I had built up my health to this point, like I was, in shape and eating well, sleeping well. I think that when you're in that kind of physical state, having a major surgery, allows you to recuperate more quickly. So I had a pretty smooth, exit out of that. And here I am now 2 years later, almost 2 years later after that surgery.
Oh, amazing.
And doing really well. Yeah.
Amazing. And I meant to ask you, when you, checked in with your friends and people that you knew, in early pandemic, you mentioned those first 2 months, and you discovered that a lot of women were having trouble sleeping. What was the main reason that you heard, for that?
Yeah, I think it was the anxiety. And it was the same reason I was having trouble sleeping, is because there was, at that point in the pandemic, we were all being told to stay inside. You're going to step outside, you're going to get COVID. I mean, it was that like fear inducing. People didn't know what was going on with their work. Everyone was at home. There was just so many unknowns.
Yeah.
And so I think those unknowns created a lot of anxiety. They created a lot of weird dreams for people. I don't know if you recall that, but there was a lot of weird dreaming.
I don't remember the dreaming, but I remember I had to have a thought at the ready that I would use as a mantra as I went to sleep. Because the anxiety was off the charts, and I put a single bed in our family room so I could get out of our bedroom with my husband because he had to work in the hospitals, and I was just freaked out completely. So I was in the family room with my mantra, everything's okay now. Everything's
Beautiful.
okay now. That's what really, really helped me.
I'm so glad it did. I wish more people had been able to do that. Yeah,
Terrible.
there were lots of sleep disturbances. So yeah, what I saw mostly was the anxiety and the stress of what's going on, what's going to happen to us.
Yeah. And I didn't have to deal with little kids, and I didn't need to leave my house to work. So I kept thinking about people who had to do that on top of everything else. Yeah. It was quite a time. I would imagine that there are going to be a lot of, papers written and published about what was going on with the pandemic and how it affected everybody's life worldwide.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from the studies that I've read and the things that I've seen and heard, it did impact people's sleep for the worse, mostly. Insomnia searches on Google went up. There were more people seeking help for sleep, and there are not many sleep doctors out there. So, right. I mean, even today, there's just post-pandemic, we don't have enough sleep doctors to serve all the people with sleep issues. It's quite sad.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I really picked up on what you said, like you said in public health, before this. So you were drawn to work that was value-based in some way and helping. But you said that you really didn't feel like you were living with true purpose. Had you picked up on that before cancer?
Yeah, I did. I didn't really feel like I had really true purpose, because the things that I was doing in public health were, it's ironic. It was breast cancer prevention.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that ironic? But I guess, not to delve off into a tangent about public health, but I didn't have a lot of power in my position. There was a lot of, bureaucracy, people above me giving me the stop on a lot of ideas. So I didn't feel like I had a lot of agency to do what I wanted with my job. And, I'm the kind of person who needs that ability to make my own decisions and to kind of carve my own path, which is why I do what I do now, not having a boss. So yeah, I mean, I feel like truly now for the first time in my life, I feel like I do have a purpose and a mission that I feel excited to wake up to every morning. I just remember the mornings when I would wake up and, just dread going to work. It was just like, I'd have to just drag myself out of bed. And now I'm like pretty happy most mornings to get up and start working.
Oh my gosh. I love hearing that. I also, my professional career is in public health and health education as well. And I remember, also starting to make decisions as an entrepreneur and just realizing I could just make a decision and something would happen, and I would either, succeed or fail, and it was okay.
Yeah.
Like I would just have to deal with it. And it was scary not to have a team of people to consult with and whatever. So, you end up building a team of trusted colleagues, and you hire the help that you need. And yeah, but I do remember that, when you're creative and when you're an entrepreneur at heart, definitely some structures of some organizations are more challenging than others.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like when you're an entrepreneur, it can be a very scary thing, but the mistakes you make, you can pivot so quickly. You can make a change and course correct a lot more quickly than if you're with a big organization and a lot of things have, gone awry.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you dove in pretty quickly, even though breast cancer and being a breast cancer survivor, both of those phases were part of what was going on for you as you launched your business. That's a lot of other stuff. And still, you got so much pleasure and inspiration and all those positive emotions from diving in and helping other women with sleep, which is so good. So let's talk about sleep, and tell me a little bit about what your ideal client, what your normal, everyday, I guess majority of your clients, what are they dealing with? Why are they coming to you?
Yeah. So my clients tend to be women in midlife. they tend to be fairly high performers with multiple responsibilities with their family and their jobs. And the common theme seems to be a lot of stress and anxiety that they're dealing with that is attached to their insomnia. So I have a multitude of tools in my toolkit that I use when I'm helping women with insomnia. But one that I've really been leaning on lately and that seems to be working quite well is mindfulness tools. So meditation, breath work, a variety of mindfulness tools that they can use, I think has been very helpful in helping manage that stress and anxiety, because it seems to be quite pervasive among midlife women, because, I call this the sandwich generation.
Absolutely.
In your 40s and 50s, you may have younger children at home. You may have older parents who need help and rides to the doctor or whatnot. And you're also juggling a very busy, demanding career. So, and then where do you take, a lot of women sacrifice their own self-care in lieu of helping all these other people out.
Yep. That's exactly what happens. I have another podcast that's, it focuses on women in the middle who are also entrepreneurs. And I'm asking specific questions about how they're doing it, because these things aren't the exception. They're the rule.
Yes.
They're the rule. And the stats about how women shoulder this responsibility, so much more than men. It's not that men never do it, and I don't have the stat top of mind, but it's the majority. It's very, very common for women to have that extra, I don't like to use the word burden, but, a commitment, a responsibility, a sense of other things that must be done. And of course, a lot of them have to do with family, and they love their family and they want to help, but it can be very disruptive, and it can be a whole lot of extra stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And what I also find with a lot of women is that they will be in that go mode all day. And then at night, that's when they use their time for catching up on social media or watching Netflix. And there's a new term for this. I don't know how new it is, a few years old, but it's called revenge bedtime procrastination.
I never heard it, and it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, this term's been around, I think, since maybe 2017. So it's relatively new, but essentially it's when people feel like they have no time during the day for themselves, they kind of like take that time back at night. And it's sort of like taking revenge, right? So they end up binge watching Netflix until past their bedtime, and then they feel bad the next day, but they repeat the cycle. So I see quite a bit of that with people right now, especially women, because they're tending to other people all day. So they want time in their day to do the things that they want to do. And the only time is at night when they should be really sleeping. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so, I can't believe there's a term for that, because that describes what I've been guilty of doing and my friends. So, wow. The other thing I wanted to ask you, if you could just define insomnia. I don't want to make an assumption that we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah. It's a good point. So, and the technical definition of insomnia is having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking up too early, at least 3 days a week for 3 months or more. That's chronic insomnia. And there's also another definition, and all of that has to create some kind of daytime dysfunction or dissatisfaction. So that's chronic. Then there's acute, which is the same criteria, except it lasts less than 3 months. With acute, a lot of times it's because of a situational thing, a divorce or a death. And those things often work themselves out, but sometimes they don't, and they lead to chronic insomnia. And that's really when it's kind of important that somebody get a professional involved, because it can really kind of create a life of its own. So, I've been working with people who've had insomnia for 20 years before they before they get help, because they're trying to do so many things on their own. And when you are trying to solve your insomnia on your own, sometimes you run into blind spots, and having someone work with you, like a coach, can help you see the blind spot and help you course correct and provide different modalities that you hadn't thought of. So,
wow. So right now, first of all, insomnia, I thought, was mostly about not being able to get to sleep. So thank you for correcting that. And I don't know if you're a listener, if that's what you also thought it was. But the other thing I'm thinking about, I mean, I can get to sleep probably because I'm sleep deprived. No problem. But we have a dog who likes to go out in the middle of the night, and he's large. So it's very easy for him to lean over the bed and poke his head into my head and wake us up. And the other thing is the peeing in the middle of the night. So I'm finding that those two things, like I would be asleep and I would stay asleep if the dog didn't wake us up. And then the other thing about the peeing, I don't even know what to do about that.
Yeah, that's a really, as we get older, that tends to be a more common occurrence. And when you're peeing 2 or more times a night, it's called nocturia. And so, once or twice during the night is probably okay. But if you're peeing more than twice, it's probably good to get checked out because it could mean sometimes sleep apnea or diabetes. One of the things that I really try to focus on with my clients who have this issue, and it's just so common, is to really be mindful about your fluids in the evening, really trying to front load your water because we want you to be hydrated. We want you to be a very hydrated person because
this is the conflict, Morgan, because it's like, I'm trying to drink my water. I'm really focusing on my water. I've got my water bottle on my desk and then there's another problem. So when should you cut it off?
Yeah. So I would say probably I try to cut mine off around 6.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's something to consider. So you want to make sure that you're getting your water requirement met throughout the day.
Wow.
But what I do is I front load the water. So I'm drinking the bulk of my water by lunchtime. So like gradually over the course of the day, I'm pulling back on the water. So I may stop drinking the water around 6, but I'll have water if I'm taking, like any kind of supplement or whatever. I'll take the water and take a few swigs, no problem. But to like chug water before bed, not to meet your hydration requirement is not a good idea.
What about the cup of tea or something like that?
That could also impact it too, because it's a liquid. And then another thing, this may sound kind of obvious, but is really making sure that you pee the right before you get into bed. Like that's the last thing you do right before you get into bed is make sure that your bladder is empty. And sometimes you also want to consider some of the foods that you eat at night. So foods that have a lot of water content, like if you're having like a smoothie or a salad with a lot of water content, that could, definitely impact that hydration quotient, right?
It's so funny that it does seem obvious that if I don't want my dog to pee at night, I would stop making his water available by a certain time. And I have no trouble with the message that, I've noticed that I can't eat late at night because then that also causes problems, not just weight, but reflux and like, who knows, like all kinds of other problems. But so I don't mind eating dinner at 5 and my kids are making fun of me and whatever. But this idea to cut off my own water consumption, the majority of the water consumption, not chugging. I don't usually chug at night, chug the water. I get that. But yeah, it just seems like such a healthy thing to do to have water all the time. So you're right. It does seem obvious, but we have to talk about it because it wasn't obvious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most people need the reminder.
Yeah.
Most people need the reminder to have most of it during the day and and it's something to experiment with. You can try, it depends on your bedtime too. I have a 9 o'clock bedtime at 9:30 around that time. So 6 o'clock is a good cutoff for me. But if you're going to bed at 11 or later, then maybe you have your water cutoff is at 7 or so. So it's something to just play around with for each person.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what's it like, to work with a sleep coach? Like, what do you do? I would imagine there's an audit or something at first.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions that I ask in the beginning because what I'm really trying to do is figure out the root cause. So once we figure out the root cause, we can start creating interventions to address that root cause. So I call myself a holistic sleep coach because I'm really looking at you as a whole person. So I'm looking at your food, your movement, your hydration, your morning and evening habits. Like how do the anchors of your day look? How do you manage your stress? What is your chronotype? So are you a morning lark or a night owl? Are you living your life according to your chronotype? How does your bedroom look? Are there a lot of electronics in it? So there's so many factors at play to investigate that are really a part of sleep coaching. And then I think really what sets sleep coaching apart from anything else is the accountability. So once we decide what the behavioral interventions will be, then, some of them can be a little bit challenging for people. I'm working with a client right now who has a lot of disrupted sleep, and we think that it's because of alcohol intake on the weeknights, right? So she's committed to only having alcohol on the weekends to see if that changes her sleep patterns. And that's a hard habit to break. I mean, I've been in her shoes. I understand how hard it is to give up the evening wine. So having a coach, helps, fulfill those, behavioral changes. There's something called the Hawthorne effect. You're probably familiar with this as a coach yourself, but it's this concept of your behavior changing because someone is watching. So ultimately, having that accountability, I think, is really impactful for sustaining those behavioral changes.
One thing that I've introduced to my whole scenario in the last, I guess 2 years, it was during COVID, was a weighted blanket. And I have to tell you, it's amazing for me. So are your clients finding weighted blankets useful?
I haven't had a lot of clients use weighted blankets. Interestingly enough, I use one myself and I really, really do like it. And I miss it when I travel because I'm not lugging a 15-pound blanket with me.
That's
everywhere.
It's heavy. Like I even got my kid to carry it out to the car and he's like, what is this?
Mom, what you got in there? Yeah, it's an awesome thing to use for a lot of people. There's not a lot of data backing it up really, because I did some research on it, but the whole weighted blanket thing seems to have stemmed from using it with, I think, autistic and anxious children in the beginning.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who have sleep anxiety end up finding it really useful. I think they're great. I mean, I think it's a really accessible intervention for a lot of people. So yeah, I'm glad that you found it to be useful. I think the only pushback I've gotten with people about it is they're afraid it's going to be too hot.
That's right. And I've heard that too whenever I bring it up. And I've noticed two things. One, you stick a foot out. That really seems to help. But the other thing is that the covers for the weighted blankets they're not all the same.
Right.
So the one that I have in my bedroom has more of a fabric with like a velour, not velour, but some kind of I don't know the words for fabrics, but I don't know.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's like more blankety, but thin.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then the one that I have that I actually like better has more of a sheet type fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I put it on top of the bedding, that seems to make a difference somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are heavy. And I don't know. I mean, back in the day, we had a golden retriever years ago who freaked out over thunder, and we got the thunder shirt. It was I think that's what it was called, which was basically a weighted blanket that was clothing. It wasn't weighted, but it was tight. It gave that security, same kind of concept. So anyway, for me, it was surprisingly effective. I love it. Yeah.
I did hear, evolutionary speaking. I mixed up the word.
Evolutionarily speaking.
Yeah. It's a big tongue twister. But what I heard was that, when we were in our, prior years, ancestral, we would sleep with like an animal skin, like a heavy animal skin on us. That could be a reaction to, a weighted blanket could be tied back to that feeling of comfort that we get from that very, very heavy animal skin on us.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did hear that as a reason why some of us like that. It does make sense. I'm glad it's not an actual animal skin. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you figured it out and it's helping you. That's wonderful. You can use it strategically. And then there's also, the possibility of using it before bed, like as you're sitting there reading or watching TV as a way to unwind. That's another use for it.
That's a great idea. That's what you see in the ads. You see people snuggling up on a couch.
Yes.
With them as well. Yeah.
We lost our air conditioning a couple weeks ago and that weighted blanket came off my bed very quickly.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't need, I was sleeping only with a sheet on me. That's how hot it was. I was like, this weighted blanket's awesome, but it's going to go until this AC is repaired.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So Morgan, how can people get a hold of you? This information I can see can be very, very useful.
Yeah. So my website is morganadamswellness.com. On my website, you will find the opportunity to have a 20-minute sleep clarity call that is completely complimentary. And it's a way for you to share some of your sleep challenges and for me to help give you some clarity on what might be causing them and a couple of next steps on how to resolve them. So I love talking about sleep. If anyone wants to schedule something with me, I love to chat about it.
It's so great when you love your work because clearly, you've already given me something to think about, which is awesome. But clearly we need to really think more about sleep. And I guess the one thing I forgot to ask you is, why is sleep such a big deal? You said it was because it supports the pillars of health, but what are some things that are really affected by excellent sleep? Yeah,
there is really nothing that good sleep does not affect, but some of the things are a better brain health. It helps us fight infection, chronic disease. It helps memory regulation, emotional regulation, blood sugar balance, hormone balance. I mean, and another thing that people don't talk about enough is it helps us become more empathetic and generous. They've even done studies showing that when people were sleep deprived, they were less likely to help out a stranger or to donate to a charity. So, I mean, I think that we can all relate to the fact that if we've really had a crummy night of sleep, we tend to be a little cranky the next day. We might not be as kind to our friends or our family members. So I think that that's a part of sleep that we don't talk about enough. It's just, it smooths over social relationships when you're getting the good sleep. So it affects everything.
Wow. I know you can't see me on Zoom, but I mean, you can, but listen, and I'm just like, wow. Like, yeah, that is really amazing. And right. Less crankiness is more fun for everybody.
Exactly. Exactly.
Amazing. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your expertise. Your story was fascinating. I'm so glad you're doing well. And it's just such a great reminder that, you know, giving back the way you are with your business and helping people in such a critical way, that motivation and inspiration came to you when your own life was very difficult. So that power of doing something like that was really useful for you in your own healing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this.
So good. Thank you. That's it for this episode. As you know, this podcast is all about how to love your life again after 50. It's really all about coaching you to be more intentional and to incorporate mindfulness into your life as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. My focus as your midlife coach is to help you get unstuck, clear, and focused on your current values and priorities so you don't have regrets. I can help you create the freedom and meaning that you're looking for. And I would love to be able to help you get unstuck and be happier and more fulfilled than ever before. So go ahead and book your momentum call at www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com and we will chat. Remember, you're also invited to purchase my new masterclass, Get Unstuck, Midlife Clarity Fast and Easy, where you can get clear about your next chapter priorities without spin, confusion, and overwhelm in less than an hour. Head over to www.midliferoadmap.com. And finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 361. You'll also see links there for the new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Thanks so much for listening. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.